Hello everyone, thanks for joining me in the Allen Block workshop to learn about what it takes to successfully construct your Allen Block retaining wall project. What I will walk you through today is how to build inside curves as a part of your retaining wall. Curves accent any landscape and are simple to design and easy to build. By simply adjusting the block angle in your retaining wall project, you can create a curve. Today, I will show you inside curves along with proper grid placement and finishing with AB capstones. Refer to our other videos on how to install proper base trench and base course, as these steps will apply. So, let's check out the layout here in the workshop to show you how it's done. For our example today, I will only be showing the placement of how to build an inside curve using AB Classic blocks in our workshop. I won't be showing backfilling in this part, but I will bring in GeoGrid placement. For your project, refer to the radius charts in our installation manuals as a guide for building your curves when installing the base trench. What I have here is two AB Classic blocks laid out to create the start of the inside curve. By simply fanning out the back of the blocks, any radius can be achieved. The front corner of the blocks need to be tight together. Add additional blocks to build the curve using consistent spacing for a smooth finish look, leveling each block as you go. Once the first course is in place, check to ensure the whole course is level and aligned. Backfilling and compaction are required, but I am just showing you layout here. On the next course, place the blocks to ensure the seams are offset from the course below by at least 3 inches and build out. Starting in the center of the curve and working out in both directions helps to minimize seams lining up as the wall grows in height. Almost all curves can be built by simply fanning out the back of the blocks as needed, and will allow for nice, gentle curves to be built without any modifications to the blocks at all. On occasions where a tighter curve or radius is needed to remove any gaps that may appear in the front of the wall, there are a couple options. Half-width blocks can be used instead if available, or modifications of the bottom notch will be needed. Again, this is for a tighter radius, not needed for standard curves. By removing parts of the block's bottom notches, it will pull the blocks closer to the face of the wall. To do this, mark the blocks to be cut on the bottom of the blocks as shown here. Using a saw with a diamond blade, cut horizontally into the block. Use a hammer and chisel to remove the cut area. Then place the block on the wall and pull up against the front lip of the course below. Modify any blocks per course as you go, and continue the same process to the top of the wall. If the wall needs reinforcement, there's a specific grid layout that is required for inside curves to ensure the curve is completely covered. Cut sections of grid to the specified lengths for the project. Place the cut edge of the grid, the machine or roll direction, tight against the back of the raised front lip of the block and fan out back into the hillside. Line up the grid sections so the front edges butt up to each other at the back lips of the block. This will create a V-shaped gap in the back where the grid is missing. On the next course of blocks, the grid will be installed to cover these gaps specific to these areas. Trim is needed along the front lips of the blocks. Measuring the largest area of the gap at the back of the grid will let you know the minimum width of the next section of grid that will be needed on the next course to cover this gap. So in this illustration, you can see the first course placement of grid and how it fans out in the back. By marking and measuring, you can see where the next course of grid is then placed to fill in the gap of unreinforced soil from the course below. So let's review what we've covered for including inside curves into your retaining wall. Lay out the inside curve in the prepared base trench by fanning out the space between the back of each block. Level each block as installed down the wall in both directions. Then, using wall rock, fill the block course, behind the block 12 inches and backfill with approved on-site soils. Rake the top of the blocks clean. Then compact with a mechanical plate compactor behind the blocks a minimum of 2 passes. If the wall requires GeoGrid, cut the grid to length and lay tight against the front lips of the blocks and position back into the hillside. Trim the ends as needed to fit the grid along the front lips. This placement will create a V-shaped gap where the grid is missing in the back. The next course will bridge the gaps. Mark the block to show where the grid meets to know where the next course of grid needs to be placed. Measure the gap at the back of the grid to know the minimum width the grid needs to be on the next course. Install the next course of blocks by starting in the center of the curve and working out in both directions. Offset the seams by either running bond or by at least 1/4 of the length of the block to minimize seams lining up as the wall grows in height. Level each block as installed and down the wall in both directions. Then, using wall rock, fill the block course, behind the block 12 inches and backfill with approved on-site soils. Rake the top of the blocks clean. Starting on the second course, compact on top of the blocks, then behind the blocks with a mechanical plate compactor, a minimum of 2 passes. Install the grid centered on the marks on the blocks below to ensure the voids in the grid coverage are filled. Remember, grid is always installed with the strength direction perpendicular to the face of the wall, going back into the hillside. If you are not sure of which orientation is the strength direction, contact your material supplier. Continue this process to the top of the wall with grid on every course, as shown in approved plans. Cap your curve by placing 2 AB capstones with the fronts of each block tight together so there is a gap in the back. Measure the distance of the gap. Divide this distance in half and measure in, and mark that on the front of each cap to know how much to remove. Draw a line from the back corner of the block to the mark on the front. Using a saw with a diamond blade, cut accordingly. Repeat this process as you move along the curve, securing caps in place with a flexible concrete adhesive. Incorporating curves into your project adds many benefits to the design, installation, and final look. Not only is it much more structurally sound, but it also lowers the amount of cutting you would have to do if it were a cornered wall instead. Curves are also much faster and easier to build. All this in mind will show you why we always recommend building walls with curves. By following these steps, you will be able to incorporate flawless looking curves into any retaining wall project. Happy building! Always better, always Allen Block.